My name is Paul Manchester, and I've lived in Glendale for about 5 years, April 2017. I'd been in West Hollywood for about 10 years, well, 20 years total, but that apartment, 10 years. And I was looking for a place with a little less traffic, and I have compassion for street folks, but I was dealing with people sleeping right where my car was and pooping outside my driver door, and just, I was looking for some place a little, and I never had anybody over because the parking was impossible. And looking on Chulia one day, I found this place for rent, and I love old architecture, and so it was from the 30s, and I just parked on the door the day they were parked at on the porch before they did the walkthrough, and I just campaigned and with persistence got the apartment, and yeah. A longtime friend has been here for like 25 years. He and his girlfriend. So I am loving being his neighbor just a few blocks away, and I didn't really know a lot about Glendale. I, at the time, was doing some work for a company in Altadena, and so I thought I would be closer for that, but actually the work dried up right after I moved here. But no, it's a good location. I like that I'm close to a freeway. I can get downtown, I can get to Pasadena or the Valley, and it's a much better location than I had anticipated. It was a very slow evolution. I was certainly aware of being attracted to other boys in elementary school. I mean, I didn't have any vocabulary to understand what that was, but pretty naive kid. So, I mean, I had a general idea of it in high school, perhaps, but even then it was such a foreign concept. I didn't really, it wasn't like something that was on my radar. It was just, I was born in 61, so I turned 61. I turned 61 in July, so in the 60s and 70s, there was just, in San Jose, California, there was just no, I just, the only gay people I'd heard of, were, the homosexuals that were burned at Sodom, so I didn't really have a vocabulary for, what that was. And in 7th grade, I remember, 8th grade, one morning I wore a plaid shirt and jeans to school, and little did I know that somewhere up in San Francisco had said, today's the be proud of being gay and wear a plaid shirt and jeans today. And of course, I had no idea of this, but all the kids teased me quite a bit for that. And I was horribly embarrassed, but I still had no idea really what it all meant. So I was always involved with theater and church and art. I'm an illustrator for a living. And when I was, obviously there were gay people in theater, but I was just ridiculously naive about so much. When I got to college, still one foot in church, a fairly fundamentalist church, and one foot in the theater world. I was an art major, then I became a Bible and music major at a Bible college. I was going to go into the ministry, and then ended up coming back to San Jose State and went studying art, and then I ended up transferring to becoming a theater major and graduated in theater, but with focus on scenery and costume. And I was assisting a man who was a very talented set designer, and so I learned a little bit more about gay people during that period. But I didn't really actually come out until I was about 28. I was living down here, and horrible, awful weekend. I saw my parents twice a year in those days. So I'd either be flying up to Washington to see them at Christmas, couldn't tell them at Christmas because that would like traumatize the entire holiday. Or they would visit me sometime in the spring. They would drive down in an RV. And so they arrived like on a Friday. They were going to be there for the weekend. And I invited them to dinner at La Fabula, which was a bright pink restaurant on Santa Monica Boulevard full of gay men. I figured it would push me to, I would have to come out. Because I knew I had, because every time I visited them, I was throwing up. And they were starting to think something was physically wrong with me. But I've always had a good relationship with them. And, you know, for years, I'd been like literally throwing up every single time I visited them. And so I needed to come out. So I took them to La Fabula on a Friday night for dinner. It was a little quiet when we arrived. And sat down at the table. And my mother was looking at, my parents were facing the wall. I was facing towards the restaurant. And my mom was staring at this painting over my head. And I'm like, you know, I hadn't really noticed it. And she was like, what is that? And I'm trying to see, and then I realized it's a giant abstract penis, which was, I changed the subject really, really quickly. And then towards the end of the meal, this fellow I'd been dating that we'd broken up, but he came by the table to visit. It was a very amicable breaking up, big 6'4", blonde bodybuilder guy, sweetheart. He came by and visited for a bit. And anyway, toward the end of the meal, my mom goes, Paul, I've just noticed something. There's an awful lot of men in here. And my dad goes, you just noticed? It's creepy in here. So we ended up going back out to the car, and after the dinner, and I, sitting in the car, told them, and of course it didn't go well. Horrible, horrible experience. But they were there the whole weekend, and it was just a tough weekend for everybody. And my ex came over for brunch that Sunday, and anyway, it was a really rough coming out. And then a week later, Terry, my ex, he killed himself, which made it really a really tough period. I think he turned seropositive. I mean, after he broke up, he started dating somebody else, and he was not a careful person. And anyway, he didn't say specifically why he did it, but that's just my guess is what happened. Anyway, that's how I came out. I mean, I never doubted that they loved me. My brother struggled a bit. I mean, he said, you know, if he was in such a hurry, he wouldn't have been such a hurry to get there if he knew where he was going, type of thing, about my ex-boyfriend, which was upsetting to hear. But I mean, everyone's on a growth thing. My mother has never really accepted it. She's still waiting for me to meet a nice girl 30 years later. My father, he's not religious, and so I think for him it was a little easier. His worries were more social, but neither of them ever wanted to discuss it particularly. So it's what it is. At a certain point, you have to love the person that is, and not who you want them to be. And so, you know, my parents dealt with it as best they could deal with it, and you know, you love them anyway. No. No, I let go of that in my 20s. I'd say my religion these days is kindness and respect. And respect both for myself and respect for others. You know, it's you know, just that's I don't care what people believe, as long as they believe in kindness and respect. That's kind of where it all rubber meets the road. Well, I've been involved with Glendale Out for a little bit. I mean, I was involved in both the art shows a few years back, like 5 years and 4 years ago, and had paintings in both of those. And since August, I've been part of the Monday Zoom meetings, just kind of planning. And so Glendale Out has been a positive experience of just meeting other folks in the community. When I first moved here, I started a meetup group, Gay Guys in Glendale, and I ran that for like about 6 months. And I met some nice people through it. Actually, I learned it through the gallery show at the 121 Gallery that Gray organized. So, and then last summer I ran into Gray at Trader Joe's, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you get more involved with Glendale Out?" And so I did. With the election, I mean, I've gotten to know different city council members and people running for city council. And so that's been useful. And then because the police union is supporting a candidate that I scratch my head at, so I had lunch with the chief of police and the captain of police with a few others from Glendale Out, talking with them about it. And even though we didn't necessarily get the result that we would have liked, there's a relationship there, and they're good men, and I appreciate knowing both the chief of police and the captain. Anyway, so the city's becoming smaller now that I'm actually meeting city council people, and I stood in for they needed someone to accept a Pride Month declaration at city council, and so I was there for that. And anyway, the city's becoming a smaller place, which I like. I think generally speaking, it's a positive relationship. They seem to be supportive of, yeah, I know there was a desire to have, both the Armenian flag colors and the gay flag colors lighting up City Hall this Pride Month, and Artie kind of nixed that idea, and I get it. I mean, it's a sensitive subject, and there are those in the Armenian community would not find that comfortable for them, those two things together, even though, obviously Gallus, and there's lots of gay Armenians who it would be supportive of if the city would do it. But I understand it. It's all a journey. When I was a kid, a Pride Month, declaring a Pride Month for a city would not even be a thing. So, and I would never have expected gay marriage to happen during my lifetime. So I mean, it's all changing. It's bit by bit. I do. I mean, I'm speaking, of course, as a cisgender, white guy. So, my experience might be very different to somebody else's experience here. But generally speaking, I'm not. Yeah, I don't have to feel like I have to hide. I mean, everybody in my life, everybody I run into, if it seems relevant at all, I mean, or seem to be aware of, who I am and my story. So I don't feel like I have to hide. Yeah, I think there's a willingness. I mean, obviously, we have a city with a lot of conservative viewpoints in addition to liberal viewpoints, and so I know they have to juggle that to some extent. When you don't grow up, I mean, being gay wasn't even on my radar as a kid because it wasn't. So the only reason I'm dealing with it because you have to, because I'm gay, and so if no one ever has a reason to actually consider the idea of what is involved with a child coming out or coming out yourself, how do you even have the vocabulary? So I understand conservative people who've never really had to deal with it. They've never known somebody. So I have sympathy there because I know it's such a foreign idea. I'm seeing changes on a lot of fronts. Black Lives Matter, and I mean, there's so many issues going on that, a lot of the trans issues. We're all on a journey on. A lot of discovery and figuring out that dynamic, and a lot of the trans issues are so new to us, really, as a society that, we're still really developing the vocabulary for how to deal with this graciously and kindly. It's such a journey.